All right, good evening, everyone. A work session of the Board of Trustees of Hardendale Independent School District will be held Wednesday, August 16, 2023, which is today at 6:15 p.m. It is 6:15 p.m. Central Office, PDC 102, Genevieve, San Antonio, Texas 78214. The board meeting will be held in person. Members of the public that cannot attend the meeting in person can access viewing the meeting via YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be made available to the public within 5 business days at the Harlandale ISD website, www.harlandale.net, under the school board /board meeting videos page. An electronic copy of the agenda packet may be accessed at the Harlandale ISD website under the school board /board book page prior to the meeting. The board may go into closed session on any agenda item and permitted under Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. In such event, the board president will announce the applicable government code section prior to the board going to closed session. Item 1, meeting call to order. We will have roll call and recording of board members present. So we'll go ahead and start our little clickers so we can get started. All right, we can go ahead and close that vote. Do declare a quorum. Everyone is present. Also, we'd like to acknowledge that Dr. Castleberry here is here joining us as well. Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item C, recording the superintendent and staff members present. Mr. Soto, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Board of Trustees, HISD Community. This evening, we have our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance, Mr. Richard Hernandez.
Here.
We have our Executive Director of Operations, Dr. Hinojosa.
Here.
We have our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Casey.
Here.
We have our Executive Director of Human Resources, Dr. Salinas.
Here.
And we have our Public Information Officer, Mariana Villero.
Here.
All right, thank you, sir. Welcome. So we're moving on to item number 2. As Ms. Juarez indicated to me earlier, public comment. There is no public comment, so we're going to move on to item 3. The board will conduct a work session with the superintendent and staff. And correct me if I'm wrong, sir, we are moving item 4.
Yes, Board of Trustees, Mr. Moreno, if we can move item 13 and move it up to number 1, we have the presenter on Zoom, and to honor his time, if we can move him up to number 1, number 13 to 1, and number 12 right behind him.
Okay, great. And Mr. Resendez, just to be clear, we don't have to vote to move or rearrange the agenda.
No, sir. As long as everybody's okay with it, there's no objection. Changing the order of the day is okay. Yes, sir.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. We're going to go ahead and move on to this item 4 will be the board will review and discuss to approve Zurich American Insurance Company as the district's property insurance for a term of 1 year effective September 1, 2023 at the cost of $778,639 funding from the general fund. And this is just information only, right, sir?
Yes, this will be presented as information and discussion, and then we'll see Monday if we want to take action or what course, what next steps the board would like to take.
Okay, so how do we, is Ms. Jackson going to present? All right, so Ms. Jackson is joining us as well.
Mr. Moreno, may I have asked something? Is this going to be a consent item on Monday's meeting, or is it going to be an individual?
It will be an individual because after the presentation, there's still going to be some more discussion that we will need Monday.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Soto.
All right, thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Soto and Ms. Cavazos. Ms. Jackson, if you may.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Beverly Jackson, the HISD Benefits Coordinator, and I'm here to present the property, equipment breakdown, casualty, and general liability insurance coverage proposals for this 2023-2024 school year, with coverage starting September 1st. For property insurance, the most current information was received yesterday and is supplied via this PowerPoint presentation. As you notice, it is different from the information provided in the transmittal and agenda item. And I have Robert Bookhammer from USI Southwest joining us via teleconference to help answer any questions that you may have. Whenever we went out for property renewal on year 3 with Zurich, year 3 out of 3. We received a renewal quote for Harlandale ISD based on the total insured values, which increased at a rate of 12.6% from last year. The total insured values for this year came in at $500,342,168. As a reference point, last year, the total insured values was $444,434,415. Zurich, our previous carrier, came in offering a $50 million all risk limit with a $10 million wind and hail coverage for a premium of $786,120. That is a difference or a premium increase of $200,777 for approximately $200 million less coverage for property and $15 million less coverage for wind and hail. So we have, because of the drastic difference in coverages, since we held $250 million in property last year, we requested excess quotes to try and bring up the property coverage. The other proposals that you see there, proposal 2 and 3. Proposal 2 increased the wind and hail coverage to a total of $25 million. The $50 million property would remain the same with Zurich, and the premium came in at $943,507.50. If we decided to layer property coverage to try and increase it to $100 million, it would come in at a premium of $1,012,758 for the year.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question here really quick?
Sure.
On proposal 2 and proposal 3, why aren't we comparing apples to apples? So $50 million property, and that goes straight across. One has 100 million, but then it has 10 million wind and hail. And then proposal 2 has 25 million, and proposal 3 also has 25 million. But the cost difference or significance on proposal 2 and proposal 3. So I'm wondering if maybe on proposal 2, if we went to 10 million like Zurich is offering, if that would affect the premium.
So if we wanted to bind coverage with excess property, which would exclude non-named wind and hail, named storms, floods, earthquakes, it would essentially be applicable to fire liability only. That would be an additional premium of $69,250.50.
Mr. Soto, would you like to share something?
Dr. Salinas, I think for clarification point, these are all quotes from our insurance company, our broker. They're all from one. I think that's the clarifying question. I believe the trustees were believing that one proposal, one insurance company was proposal 1, another insurance company was proposal 2, and there was another insurance proposal 3.
That's correct. So Zurich, our primary, is willing to write 50 million with 10 million wind and hail. That would be our primary insurance. Our excess would be through Landmark American Insurance Company, which is willing to write 15 million wind and hail only at a total cost of $157,387.50. All risk excluding non-named wind and hail, named storm, flood and quake, with an excess of 50 million property. That was the $69,250.50, which we could layer on top of the primary.
So,
Go ahead. ma'am.
so you're saying that no matter what, Zurich, proposal one, no matter what, we're staying with Zurich. The yes, I understand about the
Yes.
broker. A broker can go to many different insurances, because the only reason I know is because I go to one person who goes and shops for the best price that I need on my property insurance. So that's why I was asking why that. But even if I understand you correctly, that even with Zurich and the additional, it's still going to come out $844,000 for that premium with the additional $15 million wind and hail. Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct.
Okay.
And our broker, Mr. Bookhammer, who's available to take questions, he did go out for quotes to see what the climate was like for the property market.
Yeah, Ms. Jackson, do you mind if I just take that first question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. So we went out to 30 carriers and I sent Dr. Salinas and Ms. Jackson the marketing summary. We have been able to deliver you a single carrier solution since we picked you up as a valuable client back in 2019. The property marketplace has been eroding since 2017 after the terrible hailstorms hit across. Well, San Antonio got hit in 2016. I write the city, and I'm paying those losses, not me, but my carriers. And then 2017 was an awful year up here in Dallas, Fort Worth area. So we approached 30 carriers for your renewal. Zurich was still the single best option for building a primary 50 million. Unfortunately, over the period of years since we put you with Zurich in 2019, well, not unfortunately, it was very fortunate. They put up a 250 million limit with a 250 million wind hail limit. In 2021, they had to cut that down to 50. In 2022, in 2020, they had to cut 250 down to 50. In 21, they cut it down to 50 million. And then in 22, they cut it down to 25. This is their third cut for your 2023 renewal. It's all about capacity. It's the hardest property market in 41 years. And I know that because I've been in the business 41 years. It's not fun being me, and it's not USI, and it's certainly not Zurich. Well, it is in essence, but it's the cost of reinsurance. It's the losses. Property carriers took a 26.5 billion net underwriting loss in 2022. If you were a stock investor and you were to invest in Zurich, you would have taken a loss along with all the other property carriers. So the only way they can actually make money is to increase premiums and decrease capacities and then allocate them out, which is exactly what Zurich's strategy is. And most of in fact, all of the property marketplace when they're writing in severe convective storm areas. Unfortunately, San Antonio falls into that severe convective storm area, along with most of Texas. Severe convective storm losses just in June alone, June 10th through June 19th, were $5.5 billion. So far in 6 months in 2023, 52 billion in cat losses were incurred. 34 billion were from severe convective storm. That's kind of sets the stage. So I just wanted to throw the facts out there. These are facts. You can Google these. This is not a rhetoric. This is taken off of all of the advising and business insurance websites and things. So Harlandale ISD has been enjoying the Zurich single carrier solution up until this renewal when they cut it back to 50. And that still does remain an option for Harlandale ISD. I would like to share my screen. We model your property portfolio, basically your statement of values. And they did increase because the cost of inflation, materials, labor have gone up substantially. And underwriters are placing a tremendous amount of scrutiny on values. If we submit bad values, they don't even want to quote you. They won't quote you, period. So we inched them up as little as possible to get the best possible quote from from the carriers and Zurich in particular. I had an account that renewed in March of this year. We'd have bumped their values 32%. That's how bad they were. And then they got a 20% rate increase on top of it. I was not a fan of the CFO, but we had to do it in order to get a quote that worked for them. So what I want to do is share my screen and show you this. Where's my share screen? There it is, share screen. So I want to show you the results of this model so you can make the decision best for Harlandale ISD. All right, can everybody see that? Thumbs up, everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what we call a model. So our marketing partner modeled Harlandale. We did too, but our model was a little bit more punitive than theirs. So what the model does is it tries to figure out what the odds are of one severe storm, tornado, hail event, and what would it do to the portfolio of properties at Harlandale ISD in a 250-year return period, which is 0.4%. I know I'm throwing out a lot at you, but that's what underwriters look at. The model confirms that Harlandale's loss would be contained by a 10 million wind hail limit. In other words, where my cursor is, the model suggests that Harlandale would.
Could I interject? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate. I know that you're out of pocket right now. I mean, to be fair to us as a team, I really can't see the items because they're not projected on our screen. They're projected
They're not.
on
I'm
a
sorry.
actual screen that's visible to our people that are watching online.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And so,
Okay.
and again, as was shared with us, a lot of these things were fluid throughout the day. So I'm still confused as to what the actual number that we're looking at. And if I'm confused, I'm thinking that my team might be confused. So Mr. Soto, is there a solution that we can have so we can best have proper information to make a prudent decision? Or what can we do? Because I don't think it's necessarily fair to the team to kind of go on and just because I want to be fair to the gentleman as well on his time and not have to ask the same questions on Monday in regards to this.
Dr. Salinas, if you can get this information that he wants to present and we can give it to the board for HH. And so they can digest it for the next few days and then Monday come back and do another presentation as an individual item. And so they'll be able to at least peruse the information. As Mr. Reynolds stated, this has been an ongoing process. Ms. Jackson, you've been getting information on an hourly basis. And so we try to get this item because our properties, and we've been going on this since March, back and forth, Ms. Jackson?
I bet we started this process, sir. I know you asked Ms. Jackson. I think we started the statement of values process back in April.
Yeah, March, April.
Yeah, so
the reason we're trying to move on this, Mr. Moreno, is as of September 1st, if we don't take any action, we won't have any insurance on our properties.
No, and by no means are we saying that's the case, because we know how urgent this is, and we're obviously going to make the most conscientious decision on behalf of our community and students and such. But to me, is it something? I mean, we can get all the information, but then we are going to have probably a flurry of questions because we're not getting a complete picture of what we're looking at. The initial information wasn't shared in the board book, nor was the numbers are reflective of the same items. So I'm just putting it in context.
Mr. Chair, may I?
So Ms. Cavazos.
And I may be asking for a lot, but this is a lot to process and decide what is in the best interest for our district. Is there the possibility of having the presentation that he was going to do right now, explaining that documentation? Can he do a recording of it and be provided to us? Because I'm a visual person, and so I would like to have a hard copy as I'm listening to what he's referring to and what he's explaining, so I can go detail by detail by detail. I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't know if that's something they can do. I know it certainly would help me, and maybe it would help some of my colleagues. I just thought, why not ask?
Thank you. Yes, we can put something together.
Yes, we can absolutely do that. I'm not
Thank you very
sure I
much.
can record a video, but we'll try to figure something out.
Yeah, I think, sir, it just would be just reasonable for us to, and practical, just for us to have something somewhat tangible to see. And again, I know we're not voting on the specific items. Is it in our best interest, Mr. Resendez or Dr. Castleberry, just to hear the presentation and then still get all that information again? Because I don't want to waste someone's time.
Well, I do think it would be good, Mr. Chairman, may I speak? If Ms. Jackson, the consultant, can maybe summarize, but what I'm hearing is just costs across the state have gone up. And maybe he
Oh.
can kind of pinpoint, and I think that's what he was trying to do, but I could see the benefit of you guys having that document. But to maybe allow them to just wrap up and summarize, just to give you a bigger picture, because it seems like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We have to have insurance for our properties, but after going to 30 resources and they're bringing back the best, I think we're just in a tough spot. And it sounds like we're not the only ones. Everybody else is in the same position. But I think it might be helpful to hear them and then get the information and then come back with some questions.
And
That's just a suggestion.
And
sir.
that's, you hit the nail right on the head, sir, in that really, we're not asking that we're not ill prepared or unable to
No, I understand.
understand or rationalize what the numbers and what they signify. It's more so of being able to be presented the information without being kind of unsure of what we're asking or what.
I
we're looking at
completely understand.
strategically. And really also your time as well, sir. I mean, obviously you're doing this on the fly in terms of maybe not having all your resources accessible to you. And so to us, I know it's been a thing that you've been actively trying to formulate to support us, but to me, it's really being able to understand the rationale behind it so we can offer a fair and balanced argument to our community so they know why this is happening, because us hearing it could go in one ear out the other, just because one, it's difficult to hear you. Two, we don't have something tangible to view at. And then three, it's been a fluid conversation since March, and especially even today. So I think that just provides more context, just to be able for us to make a clear and sound decision come Monday. And we know the sense of urgency is imperative, is imperative. So Mr. Soto, would that seem reasonable or?
Yes, sir. Ms. Jackson, we'll get on it. Thank you, Ms.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, before we go,
Yes, sir.
were you on the committee with them, sir? Who was on your committee, ma'am,
No, there was,
to get everything together?
No, there's
No?
There's
This is the first time you're hearing it also?
no, they've had me in contact that they've been trying since April.
What I'm
March,
getting
April.
at is, what would be your recommendation?
My recommendation is to go with the 760. I can't even.
Because even when it boils down to, sir, I mean, we can get all we can ask all the questions we want, but you know, we got to follow recommendation. And we got to, you know, understand that we know prices are going up. You know, we all work in places where we've had to gone up, you know, no matter what position, what kind of work you do. You know, I'm pretty sure Tony's gone up on his prices. You know, that's just the way it goes. Even I had to go up on my prices because they went up on me. So that part I understand. I don't have a problem with that. If this is the best offer that we've been able to get, sir, if your recommendation to me would be, Mr. Mancha, this is my best recommendation, that I would be satisfied with it, sir.
Well, thank you,
That's
Mr.
just
Mancha.
my opinion. Because I can ask 1,000 questions, and when it boils down to, sir, I'm gonna have to follow your recommendation.
For Monday's recommendation, it was going to be for the 786,000. Can I say that? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I already said it.
It's on.
And we're not raising our rates, by the way, just so you know, sir, but just.
Go ahead, Ms. Reese.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Reese.
So I don't want to offend anybody, but you know, being in the real estate industry, I deal with insurance, property insurance things all the time. Now, my understanding is that Zurich checked 30, right? As a broker, has access to 30 insurance carriers. Is there the possibility to look for another broker that has access to more carriers?
Ma'am, I deal with the largest property wholesaler in the world. They have access to every excess and surplus lines carrier that's interested in this type of property. We accessed every one of them. So you're not limited to just USI. USI has a retail license. We access over 100 different carriers. None of them want to touch school property in Texas. not of your size at least, and certainly not of any greater size than you. Amwins is a specialty broker. They have a public sector unit. I met with them out at National Prem in June. And I also work with the largest property wholesaler in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He writes property all over Texas. I'm very confident that the proposal he's put forth to me, that I put forth to you, is the best that's going to be provided by any carrier in the property marketplace in the school business.
Thank you.
All right, well, I think we're kind of, we have the understanding of what the team is requesting. My final point is this, I mean, on the item I read is a different number from what the item that's being presented for proposal. So those are the things why I just feel in my interest and the team is just, it's important for us, because not me reading something different and then we're actually going to propose something that's about maybe $8,000 more. So that's why I'm saying that, because I mean, I don't want people to say you're not even paying attention when you should be paying attention. So that's the rationale behind it. Because we're not questioning the ability of our superintendent and his team to get the proper assessment to us. So I think we'll just get that information and as soon as we can, and then I know we'll be prepared to vote come Monday.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So I guess we can move on to the next item. Thank you, sir, for your time, and
Appreciate you. Thank you.
hopefully we
Nice to
can,
meet you.
Go from there. Item 12 is going to be the board will review and discuss the renewal of casualty and general liability coverage where Property Casualty Alliance of Texas with North American Solutions effective September 1, 2023 at a cost of $259,387 funding from the general fund. Mr. Soto, if you please.
Yes, Ms. Jackson, please.
Thank you.
The gentleman or-
North American Solutions through the Property Casualty Alliance of Texas is property casualty insurance that we have utilized for many years now. They came in at a premium of $259,387, which is a 16% increase from last year. Property casualty insurance includes cyber loss and liability, general liability, educators, legal liability, auto liability, auto physical damage, and catastrophic comprehensive coverage. Both the limits and the deductibles remain the same from last year, but with the premium increase of a 16%.
All right, guys. Anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding this item?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Jackson, can you repeat the last? You said the premium is higher, but what stays the same? Is it the coverage and?
The coverage limits and the deductibles.
Thank you.
Anyone else will have any comments or clarification needed? All right. Well, it looks like this one's straightforward, Ms. Jackson, so thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we'll move on to the next item.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
point of order,
Mr.
are we
Luna.
going out of order or back in order?
Yeah, so I apologize for not providing insight into that as well.
Thank you.
I was Mr. Soto shared if we can do some rearranging. That's why I asked if we can make some adjustments based off of some of the presenters not being accessible in person and being out of pocket. So we wanted to go ahead and do that just to be conscientious of their time just as much as ours. So I apologize for not clarifying that at the beginning, guys. Moving on to item 18, as suggested also by our superintendent, is presentation discussion regarding board governance training consultant. Moving on to that, Mr. Soto.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Board of Trustees, this gentleman was driving down from Austin, and y'all know Austin traffic, so we didn't know where to put him. Usually if we have presenters that are going to present in person or in Zoom, we try to put them up in front so they can take care of their business and be cognizant of their time. He did beat traffic and we thank him for that. He took the toll road. He said he was going 85 miles per hour. And so he is here to present over board governance.
Board of Trustees, Mr. Soto, Dr. Castleberry, thank you so much for the opportunity to come before you to speak. So before I begin my presentation, I'll give you a little bit of background because I think it's important if we're going to enter into a relationship, if that's what y'all choose to do, I think you need to know a little bit about me so that we can kind of get a starting point. So I retired in 2020 as the Education Service Center Director at Region 2 in Corpus Christi. I worked under Dr. Castleberry many years ago. That's where I started my service center career. So I retired after 38 years, and I've been at all levels of the school system, and I've been training boards since 2000. So I'm a Lone Star governance coach, and so I've been training boards as well in that. And so I grew up not too far from here. I went to San Antonio ISD, graduate from Burbank. And so I also have some of your kids, some of your students I teach CCD at St. James, and I have some of your students in my CCD class. So there's some connections that I have with you all as well. So I don't have a handout to provide for you because I want this to be a conversation about Lone Star governance. And so I want to thank you for your commitment for ensuring student success, because we all know that it's easy to get bogged down in all the stuff that we have to do. And sometimes it's really hard to focus on the real things that matter, and that's student success and academic achievement for your kids. And so as you've been on this Lone Star governance journey, it's my understanding that you are looking for another opportunity, another option other than Lone Star governance. So what I'm here to propose to you is that we will create something together, but knowing that if we choose this option, you can no longer apply for any TA grants. You cannot apply for any leaderboard opportunities or anything regarding Lone Star governance because you are not doing Lone Star governance. What I would call this is governance training. And it's going to piggyback off on some of the things you did, because some of the things you've done for Lone Star governance have been really helpful for you, I would imagine. And there's some great tools in Lone Star governance. And so I don't want to throw everything outside because I think you've done some great work and it's obvious that you've been moving forward. So one of the things that I would propose to you is some board training on True Colors. And True Colors training is personality spectrum. And there's 4 colors, and it allows you all as a team to really understand how you operate at your best, but also for you to understand how your colleagues on the board operate at their best, so that when you have conversations about the real things that matter, you take that into account and are able to approach people based on what makes them the most efficient and the most effective, and likewise. So I have done this board training with many boards, and I have found that communication increases and the effectiveness of that communication and the efficiency increases because when I'm saying something, you're understanding what I'm saying as opposed to making some assumptions about what I think I'm saying or what I'm not saying. So some training for that. I also think it's important for the National School Board Association has 8 characteristics of effective school boards. And I think it's important for you all for us to have a conversation around those. And then as we go through each of those tenets is have a conversation. Okay, so this is one of the things that the National School Board says is important for school boards. How do you all exhibit that? And if you all don't exhibit that, to give me evidence of that, it's how do we go about making sure that that happens? Because I know that you want to be increase your effectiveness as a board. The other strategy that I would recommend is strategic questioning strategies. That's difficult for all of us. And so I think if we can hone in on strategic questioning strategies, I think it can help you all and help staff also as they're presenting information to you regarding the Lone Star governance accountability piece. And then other trainings to help you develop. So these are just proposals, but I'm not here to give you a plan. What I am here to give you is an opportunity to have a conversation to create a plan that's going to meet your need. Because I have found over time in the many years that I've working with boards is when you hand them something, sometimes that's not what they want or what they need. But if you create it together, then we create it together, and we know that's very valuable to us, and we're going to invest that time and energy and effort into doing that. So the other proposal that I will propose to you is Lone Star Governance has some really amazing tools. And I think some of the tools that I would like for you to consider to continue to work on is the monitoring calendar. And I want us to have a conversation around the monitoring calendar so how do you use it? How effective is it for you? And what changes would you want to create around the monitoring calendar to be able to make sure that staff gives you the information that you need to make informed decisions as you all have conversations about student achievement? The other piece is the monitoring report. I've seen a lot of monitoring reports from districts, and I just want to make sure that we have a conversation about its effectiveness for you. Is it working for you? I think you said earlier, you're a visual person. So is the monitoring report addressing your needs? As a visual person, can you easily identify information? Because sometimes we get lost in numbers because they give us a lot of numbers and we get lost in those numbers. So how do we identify that? And it's my understanding your current monitoring now is a color-coded system. So you know it's red, yellow, and green. So you can quickly identify. And so based on that, when we have the strategic questioning, then we can base our questions based on those kinds of questions. The other piece that we would look at is the time use tracker, because I think that's a good tool. However, I think that as a team of 8 is how do we modify that tool so it becomes an effective tool for us and not just another task to complete? Because as I was looking at time use tracker, there's some things that I think, and having conversations previously with some of the team, they said that you don't use all of it like you'd like to use it. So I'm focusing on those. And then any other tools, as we have conversations about the tools that are effective or some tools that you may consider, what about if we measure these things? Can we use a tool for that? So I think we want to develop that as this team of 8. And then coaching support. A lot of times what happens is boards will ask me to coach them around the Lone Star governance process. And so it's making sure that the coaching of that is timely and that's effective, that's going to help you grow. Because no one likes to sit in a meeting and just waste time, right? We want to be productive in that time. So those are the comments or the things that I would propose to you to consider as you consider Lone Star governance or modification of governance training as a model for you. I keep using Lone Star governance, but I got to stop because it's not Lone Star governance, it's governance training. So whatever that is, but I would like for us to have a conversation, if you choose to go that route, to have a conversation and for us to develop that process. So what questions do you have thus far?
Yes, Ms. Ortiz.
Okay, and so the training would be monthly at our regular board meeting, or we would have special called board meetings that we would specifically do this training, and it'll be as a group.
Okay.
For credit, if you will. I don't know what you would call it.
Yes, you would get credit, board training credit. And the training would take place at whatever you all decide as a team of 8 is best for you all. So if it's during a regular board meeting, then yes, or special board meeting. So whatever the board decides is going to be the best fit for them, that's what we want to do. We don't want to force fit something because I know you have busy lives. So adding another meeting may not be the most efficient. So to incorporate it into a meeting that's already scheduled. So that would be determined upon the decision that you all make.
So I guess, Mr. Alvarado, I know we've had some indirect conversations and such. When it comes to this model, I mean, I know I shared with the team, it's somewhat of an a la carte type of situation. I do like the idea of presenting it in a way that it gives us the ability to have ownership in the implementation and actually in the production of what we would find authentic and meaningful. I think I shared that with you kind of continuously throughout our conversation is we want to buy into something that we believe in, whether it's a self-reflective practice, whether it's us being able to follow our board operating procedures, whether it's us saying, hey, we're making effective and efficient use of our time, and we're structuring our questions that are catered to meet the needs of what our role is, and also how it satisfies the need of supporting our students and community. So those are things that you are going to be able to provide us ongoing throughout the process.
Correct. And keep in mind that you're a little unique because you have a conservator. So anything that you all decide to develop, of course, Dr. Casper would have to approve whatever that is as we move forward. So it's not something we create without the approval of Dr. Casper.
Oh, we got that, but it's just the idea of being able to be an
Right.
active participant.
Yes.
To give some more context, in the previous model of LSG, I've gone to like 3 or 4 different meetings, and it's always been something that's somewhat fluid as the situation that we had earlier, where it changes, and sometimes those updates weren't communicated to us in a way that one was able to be understood and two be authentic. So those are things that we want to, stray from. We want to be able to know explicitly what is it that's being expected of us, clearly understood, so we as a team can work in the most efficient way and be just this initiative for a mechanism for change for our community.
Right.
So those are our goals, I'm sure, and I'm sure my colleagues can share their own thoughts as well in regards to it. That piece of us being a conversation, could you give us kind of an idea or hypothetical on what that conversation may entail? Would it just be us sitting around in a work session, or would it be us actively, having a genuine meeting and working to figure out how we can best suit our community?
We would co-create that. So it'd be at a meeting. So what will happen is we will bring the topic, for example, a time use tracker, and we would say, okay, so this time use tracker, what's useful for you? And then you say, okay, this is useful, so we want to keep it. This is not useful, so we don't want to keep it. Like, for example, the constraints. It's my understanding you don't want to do the constraints anymore. So we would not track constraint because it was, so we would create whatever you all determine with the approval of Dr. Castleberry is important for you all to track. We would track that and find a mechanism to be able to track it. So the meetings would be based on what your needs are, and then we adapt those needs to the instrument, as opposed to the instrument being there and you adapting to the instrument.
And I mean, I think that's one of the cornerstones of this process potentially, is that we're not trying to fit into what works for them, but we're trying to fit into what works for us. And I think that's a breath of fresh air for myself, and I'm sure our team as well. I don't know if anyone had any other questions or comments or clarification needed.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Cavazos.
Mr. Alvarado, so are we doing governance training or are we doing Lone Star governance? Because I hear you say both, and I know you've corrected yourself and said, I'm going to stop saying Lone Star governance because this is governance training. However, I continue to hear you speak about templates or procedures that we were being asked to follow while under the Lone Star governance training. So can you help me out, please?
Yes, thank you for me confusing you. So we will be doing governance training, but we will be using some of the tools that you've already experienced in Lone Star governance. But we are not doing Lone Star governance because you won't be able to qualify for any of the grant money that's available for Lone Star governance.
Thank you for the
Thank-
clarification.
thank
Thank you,
you
Mr.
for-
Alvarado.
Clarifying that too.
I guess to also echo Ms. Cavazos, the idea is that we do a lot of things extremely well as a team. And is why reinvent the wheel when we already have some of these mechanisms in place? That's really something that we need to hang our head on, is that we do so many things well. Now, the system that we were trying to follow somehow penalized us sometimes for what it was, because it was very rigid. So the idea is here, let's find a way to emphasize and highlight all the good we do, and not just focus on, man, we haven't hit this target, man, we haven't hit this mark. And I think that's something with this possible potential partnership that we can actually have some good outcomes come to fruition. So
Right.
those are some things to consider as well.
Yes, because you'll still have the accountability piece. It's just going to be measured differently than Lone Star governance does it.
May I, Mr. Chair? Mr. Alvarado, accountability. You said we are still going to have the accountability piece. How much of the governance training is focused on self-accountability from us board members and accountability from us to the community?
I think that's a great question. So I think that'll happen is what is it that you all need? Because I'm not going to come here and tell you, you should be doing this. It's about having a conversation between you all. And so how do we want to focus the accountability for self-accountability for us? And what processes will we use to ensure that we have that self-accountability to each other? And then what process will we use for accountability to our community? So it's not going to be where here's the plan, follow it. It's going to be, this is what we want. How do we create a process to be able to get that end game, whatever that end game is for us.
So we're looking at à la carte, basing it on what we feel are the needs for ourselves and working on those needs. Is that correct?
As a team, yes.
Okay.
But keeping in mind that you're still accountable for the House Bill 3 goals. So that still has to be a tenant. But how you get there is a creation that we all create.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado.
Sure.
Anyone else need any clarifications or comments or anything to share of concerns? Let's see. Dr. Castleberry, was there anything you wanted to share on regards to this potential partnership?
Well, I'm encouraged by the structure or the lack of structure that Mr. Alvarado brings to the process. And I think it's up to you all to make it work the way you want it to work.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate the insight. Again, yeah, it's the ability of us as a team to work in unison. And I think that's something that we're really excited about potentially doing, is being able to have our actual our hands and our handprints on something that is reflective of who we are. So that's something for us to consider going forward. Anyone else prior to us moving to the next item? Or it's Rick, right? Yes, Rick. So I guess we appreciate it, Mr. Alvarado, your time, your efforts and your drive all the way over here. I know it's not easy trying to beat Austin traffic down 35. So we truly appreciate that. I guess we'd go on Monday, and that's when we would decide based off of the things that have been presented to us in this as well. So is everybody kind of clear on what road we're going on in terms on Monday of what we can select? Okay.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, so moving on to item number 4. These are a couple pieces or multi-layered. The board will review and discuss the renewal of the MOUs contract agreements for the 2023-2024 school year for the following agencies: vendors, College Board, PSAT, SAT School Day, $82,771, funded through the College Prep Budget Local Funds renewal. Of the University of Austin on-ramps, cost will be determined based on enrollment and economic disadvantage status to be funded through the College Readiness Budget Local renewal. Sanitary Education Partnership, $54,000, funded through the College Readiness Budget Local, another renewal. And the Autism Treatment Center, $165,449.01, funded through the general fund, which may be reimbursed from the federal grant funds if awarded, which is new. Mr. Soto, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, at this time, Ms. Casey will go over the renewals and the new item there at the end.
Good evening, Board, Mr. President. We have this is on page 4 and 5 of your board book. Our first item is College Board, PSAT and SAT School Day testing. We actually provide testing for our students at no cost. Their college exams for 8th and 9th grade, they take the PSAT. In 10th and 11th, they take the PSAT NMSQT, which allows them to qualify for National Merit Scholar, National Hispanic Scholar. And then the SAT test, they take at 11th and 12th grade. This is, like I said, free to all students. It's offered during the school day. For students that are unable to make that day, we do provide alternate dates that we can work with the vendor on. And it is a cost of $82,771. It is a renewal. Do I continue? Okay. We also have UT on-ramps. This is actually a dual enrollment course. We have students that are enrolled here, but they're actually taking a college course from UT Austin. They get a UT Austin transcript after this course. It's offered both at Harlandale and McCullum, and it offers, we have it in several courses depending on where students select on their choice slips. The fee is we spent approximately 50,000 last year. However, that is dependent on the number of courses, the number of students, as well as whether or not they qualify for economically disadvantaged, how much we pay per student. That is also a renewal, and it's paid out of our college readiness funds. It's local funds. San Antonio Education Partnership, it's a partnership we have between our district, and and they actually have service providers at Harlandale, McCullum, and STEM. They actually work with our students. Students are asked to do some college readiness, such as enrolling in college. They have to go to meet with an advisor. They have to go to courses at Cafe College, and then they have minimum requirements: an 80 or above GPA, demonstration of financial need, and attend 3 college success workshops. We will have, with the cost is 54,000, 24,000 for Harlandale, 24,000 for McCullum, and 6,000 for STEM Early College, funded through the College Readiness Renewal. At the 2 comprehensive high schools, they will be there multiple days, where at STEM, because it's a smaller campus, they're only there 1 day a week. And then finally, Autism Treatment Center. We have a student who's enrolled in middle school, and his level of needs far exceeds what a campus can provide. Autism Treatment Center is a private center here in San Antonio. It's a non-public setting, and it's determined by the ARD committee. This also qualifies for reimbursement. We have another student in an out of the city, a residential treatment center, but this will also qualify for reimbursement, which the state determines after the school year. The cost is $165,449.01, funded through the general fund. And like I said, it may be reimbursed through federal funds if awarded. The funds may also be eligible for reimbursement through the Texas Education High Cost Funds.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on any of these items that have been presented? Yes, Ms. Ortiz?
Yes, Ms. Casey, the only thing that I would like to see is for each of these programs, if we could find out how many participants are in it. And on the autism, how many children, did I hear 2? Did you say 2?
This is one student.
One
We have
student.
another
Oh,
student that's
okay.
in a residential treatment center that we brought to the board a couple of months ago.
Thank you. That was the only thing. I just would like to see numbers. That's all. Thank you.
All right, yes, Mr. Luna.
I was, to follow up on that, I was just saying, I did have how many students participated, but also, sometimes doesn't matter how many kids participate, we still have like a flat fee or flat cost. Is that part of this deal as well?
College Board is actually, the quote is based on our enrollment at those grade levels. On-ramps is per student by course. The partnership is actually a flat fee that they charge schools our size. And Autism Treatment Center is an individual cost per child.
All right, thanks.
Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed on these items presented? No? Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, or now I'm confused now. Item 5, I guess. All right, the board will review and discuss adopting a board resolution to approve Bexar County 4-H as an extracurricular activity for purpose of youth participation in projects, events, and activities, renewal and at no cost. Mr. Soto, please.
Ms. Casey, if you go over the next 2 items.
Yes, sir. The first one is a resolution which allows the 4-H club to be recognized as an extracurricular activity. And it also aligns with, it complies with the Texas Education Administrative Code. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension will request academic eligibility for competition and non-competitive purposes when an absence is required. We do not have students that miss class for this. We have students that participate after school or during school. The second item is the board is asked to consider and take action recognizing the adjunct staff member. What we have adjunct members from Texas A&M Prairie View, as well as Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, which is in Prairie View. They come to our campuses, they work with our students, and it's at no cost to the campus. And no cost to the campus or the district. That cost is paid for by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Services, and they remain under supervision of that company.
All right, guys, any comments, concerns or clarification needed on this item? No, great. Moving on to item 6, the board will, 7, excuse me. The board will review and discuss recognizing the Texas A&M Bear County investment report. Oh, sorry. Item 7, excuse me, because I didn't read number 6. I apologize. The board will review and discuss the investment report for quarter ending June 30th, 2023.
Yes, Mr. Chair, at this time, Mr. Hernandez will present.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, on page 11 is the investment, summary of the investment reports for the quarter ending June 30th, 2023. Various funds are listed there from general fund, debt service, and our bond funds. The total of those amounts equal $123 million of investment in cash. Below that is a summary of the changes from one quarter to the next. In the general fund, we saw a decrease of about 5.2 million, and that's mainly due to the state payment schedule to the district. In the month of April, we don't receive a state payment, which is usually about 8.7 million. So we are cognizant of that, and we schedule our cash flow accordingly. Our debt service, it increased by 941,000. That's mainly due to our tax collections. We have no debt payments during that quarter, but we did have debt payments this past as of yesterday for our August payments. The settlement fund and the next funds after that are related to construction projects. We had a net decrease after interest earnings, which helped offset some of the cost. And so for that decrease, it was 26,000, but we had a total amount of expenditures of 102,000. So we can see interest rates are good for our investments and help offset our cost. Our facility assessment fund, which is the maintenance and tax notes, we had a net decrease after interest earnings of about 1.3 million. And in that fund, we continue paying for construction payments for eligible projects under the stadium, which is mainly related to the American disability requirements that we need to meet. We also have fencing, asphalt repairs, and our HVAC major repair expenses, which help provide relief to the general fund. The next fund is our general facilities fund. And again, that is more related to the future projects coming up. And the net increase actually was 10,273. So again, interest earnings help offset some of the costs that we're incurring as we start getting ramping up to using those general bond facilities funds. Those costs include architect services, our major technology infrastructure of about 328,000. The next fund is our construction fund for the stadium fund, and we've seen significant progress in that project. And so we're getting close to winding down that fund. But again, the amount in that fund is 3.1 million from 9.5. For the quarter after interest cost, it decreased by 2.3 million. And so actually in construction payments, we had 2.4. And again, interest earnings help offset those costs. A new investment that we opened up was our health insurance. We have some monies available that in order to get a higher yield, we move it from our cash account into an investment pool. So that amount is at 172,000. The next page on page 12 just provides you a breakdown of the various types of investments that we have. The more significant investment that we have is in commercial paper. It's short-term, usually lasting between 3 to 5 months, provides a higher yield and is basically equivalent to cash. The other investments that we have are money markets, municipal bonds. What I do want to point out is that from maybe 12 months ago, our rates were below 1%. Now we're seeing them inch up to 1.08% to as high as 5.37%. And they're actually more around that area. So again, we try to invest our monies in order to offset some of the costs that the district is incurring. And that completes the report, sir.
All right, guys, thank you. Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this item? No. All right, thank you, sir. Moving on to item 8, the board will review and discuss to approve the Bear County Appraisals District Certified Appraisal Roll and Supplemental Appraisal Roll for the tax year 2023 for Harlandale Independent School District. Mr. Soto.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Hernandez can continue.
Yes, sir. And actually, the next three are related to the property taxes and the appraisal values of the district. As a result of the special session in Senate Bill 2, one of the items that are on for the November 7th election is Proposition 4, which is going before the voters in order to increase the homestead exemption from the current 40,000 to 100,000. So in light of that, one of the items in following the tax code section 26.09 and also utilize Mo Casey's guidance, what is recommended for the board to approve is not only the certified appraisal roll, but what they call a supplemental roll. And the certified appraisal roll is the appraisal roll with the 40,000 homestead exemption, and the supplemental roll, which is basically the same roll, but factoring in $100,000 homestead exemption in light of the constitutional amendment that's going before the November 7th election that's going to be held. So our recommendation will be to accept both certified appraisal roll at 40,000 homestead exemption and the supplemental appraisal roll at 100,000 homestead exemption. The pages 18 and 19 provides you the breakdown of the various property types of the two rolls, with 18 with the $40,000 homestead exemption and page 19 with the $100,000 homestead exemption.
Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this item, guys? Yes, Mr. Luna.
I'm just wondering, I'm trying to see the two differences here in the ones 40,000 versus 100,000. Does that mean we make less income taxes?
Yes, sir. And that's an excellent
Or
question.
does the state pick up the other
Exactly.
part?
Exactly. That's one thing. But what the state has to do, and as we've learned in what they call maximum tax compression, is that the adjustment will be made if the 100,000 homestead exemption is approved. And as you said, and as we know, the state will make up the difference of the tax levy that would be less at 100,000 homestead exemption than what it is right now at the 40,000. But yes, sir, the state will make up the difference.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And I guess just to be clear, sir, so that has to be done by us approving both tax rolls as presented?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
To accept them.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments, concerns, or clarifications needed? All right, did that also take care of the next couple, sir?
No, sir. Each one is separate and requires, it will require a separate board action.
Okay, so moving on to item 9.
Yes, sir. And so item 9 is a formality that we have to follow regarding the Texas tax code 26.04, and where the board needs to designate an officer or an employee to calculate what we call the no new revenue rate and the voter approval tax rate. And with the assistance of Mo Casey, I work closely with them in order to have that developed, and that actually is the next agenda item. But for this one, what needs to be done is a resolution needs to approve with the board designating which employee would be designated to calculate that. So in this case, we're recommending to designate the Assistant Superintendent for Finance to calculate this no new revenue tax rate and the voter approval tax rate. And once that's approved, then going henceforth, the board will only take action if it chooses to change the title of the appointee.
All right, great. Thank you. Any comments, concerns, or clarification on this needed on this item, guys?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Luna.
is this in response to the tax code only, or is it a response to the new law that the assistant?
No, sir, it's a response to the tax code.
So is it like a renewal thing or it's a?
No, sir, this would be a one-time where the board approves a resolution appointing the assistant superintendent for finance to do this calculation each year.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so if there's no further comments, concerns, or clarification needed, we'll go ahead and move to the next item, which is number 11. The board will review and discuss the request to award RFP 2081 Teacher of Students with Visual Impairment.
It's 10.
Yeah, sorry, it's all right. We had to revise the agenda again. The board will review and discuss the request to award RFP 2081 Teacher of Students with Visual Impairments.
Let's see.
No, it's item 10 still. Okay, no, it's the same one, so it is item 10 that's listed here. The board will review and discuss to accept the no new review revenue tax rate and voter approval tax rate for the tax year 2023 for Hondo Independent School District.
Yes, sir. And this is just a follow up to after the appointing, we calculate the no new revenue and the voter approval rate. So basically, if you turn to page 23, what's presented for approval and acceptance by the board are three different tax rates, and what we call the last year's tax rate, which is the tax rate that we have for the 22-23 year, and that tax rate was 1.4429. Now, there's a calculation that the state has that the district needs to do, and it's called this year's no new revenue tax rate. And basically, what it is that it's a tax rate that would be used with the property values of this year's 23-24 and calculating how much would the rate need to be in order to raise the same amount of revenues that it would raise if it was comparing to last year's property values. Now, what it doesn't account for is the impact that we have from state aid. So that naturally, as your property values go up, your tax rate's going to go down. So the no new revenue tax rate is 1.1056. However, when we factor in the impacts of the state aid and the calculations, the voter approval tax rate, the maximum that the district can approve without having to go for tax rate election is 1.2575. And that is an M&O rate at 0.7575 and a debt service rate of 0.50. Now, what's important to remember, because this will affect an agenda item later on in some of the wording where it's required to say that there is a 13.74% increase of the tax rate that's being adopted. And really that increase is the difference between the no new revenue tax rate of the 1.1056 and the voter approval rate. So again, that kind of helps explain why that statement needs to be made, but it is a requirement by the state in order for us to have our tax rate adopted. But on this particular issue, it's just the board accepting these calculations.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions, comments, or concerns related to this item? No? All right, moving on to the next item. The board will review and discuss the request to award RFP 2081 Teacher of Students with Visual Impairment, TSBI to services to teaching for tomorrow LSC, Saline Health LSC, and National Vision Services for various estimated hourly amounts of $80 to $90. Funding will be from the federal grant funds and the state special ed allotment. Mr. Soto.
Yes, Mr. Chair, at this time, we're going to call our Special Ed Director, Ms. Della Taylor.
Good evening, Board President, board members. How y'all doing today? I'm happy to be here. These services are for my children that are visually impaired. We went out for an RFP and we're asking that we award the services to actually two different companies. Teacher for Students of Visually Impaired, which is also Teaching for Tomorrow, and Solvent, actually three, and National Vision Services. We have quite a few students who need these particular services to access to general ed curriculum.
Any concerns, comments, or clarification needed, guys?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Cavazos.
Ms. Stella, are these providers or will be providers if the board decides? Have they serviced our students in the
Abs-
past?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Teach for Tomorrow has been with us for about 5 years,
Okay.
servicing our students.
And Solient Health and National Vision Services, are those new to us?
Those would be new to us.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed, guys? No. All right, thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Thank
Um,
you, sir.
Moving on to the next item, the board will review and discuss the purchase of Google Workspace the board will review and discuss to approve Thomas McMickle, Security Services Coordinator as the District Cybersecurity Coordinator of Record. Mr. Sultan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, at this time we'll have our Director of IS, Ms. Myrna Martinez.
Yes, good evening, Mr. President, members of the board and Superintendent Soto. I have the next two items. So in 2019, the Texas Legislature enacted Texas Senate Bill 820, which requires each school district in Texas to adopt a cybersecurity policy that helps to defend our network against cyber attacks. They felt this bill was necessary due to the increased number of cyber attacks against educational institutions. In addition to developing a cybersecurity plan that included various control objectives, the superintendent of each Texas school district must appoint a cybersecurity coordinator who serves as the liaison between the school district and the Texas agencies. In this role, the cybersecurity coordinator is responsible for reporting security incidents or any breach to the infrastructure to the state government as soon as they can following the discovery of said incident. The cybersecurity coordinator is charged with notifying parents and guardians of instances where malicious actors compromise their students' information and explain what school officials are doing to prevent that from happening again. We ask the board review and approve Thomas McMickle, the district security services coordinator, as the district's cybersecurity coordinator of record.
All right, thank you. Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed? No, all right. And then moving on, you got the next item as well, Ms. Martinez?
Yes, sir.
The board will review and discuss the purchase of Google Workspace for Education Plus for students and Google Workspace for Education Plus for staff. This is a 3-year license for all students and all staff at the annual cost of $51,000 and a 3-year total cost of $153,000. Funding is from the instructional materials allotment. Ms. Martinez?
Yes, in 2015, the district's curriculum department made the decision to move to the Google platform for educational purposes. Google accounts were made and distributed to students, faculty, and staff. The tools and services in Google Workspace for Education are tailored for schools to collaborate, streamline instruction, and keep learning safe. The purchase represents a renewal with Google to continue using the services that they provide. Google Workspace for Education is a paid subscription with payments made annually. The Google platform is eligible for funding under the materials adopted by the State Board of Education and can be ordered through the EMAT, which is the online instructional materials ordering system, with funds from the district's instructional materials and technology allotment. Information services staff in collaboration with CNI recommend that we purchase the Google Workspace for Education from CDW Amplified Education via the TIPS USA cooperative at the bid cost of $51,000 annually for a 3-year period. Funding comes from the instructional materials and technology allotment.
Thank you. Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this item? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Moving on to the next item, the board will review and discuss the approval of bond 2022 steering committee recommendations for the bond 2022 Prop A, general facilities designated for community needs. Mr. Soto, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, at this time, Dr. Hinojosa will present on some steering committee recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Soto, Mr. President and members of the board. So for this particular item, we will be taking or asking for consider and approval for the recommendations from the steering committee that is put in place for the community needs component of Proposition A. And so before we go into it, we do have 4 members of the committee here, and I would like to thank them for all their efforts and the hard work that they put in over this last year to put this list together. So thank you very much for those of y'all that are here. So while we have more than 4 members in the committee, these are the ones that have really kind of stuck with us, been there through most of it. So they have gathered community input, gone to campuses and visited campuses to be able to compile this list. But as I mentioned, so this particular, on page 35 and page 36 of the board book, you'll see a list. It's a comprehensive list of items that have been discussed up to this point. But if you were to subtotal out all the totals for the different items, it's not going to total out to the 30.4 million that was approved through Proposition A of bond 2022. So this particular, these two particular pages, or these items on these 2 pages, is what we are determining as like phase 1. So when you total out all those 3, it totals out to 9.9 million, a little over 9.9 million. So we still have a balance that we will discuss here in a little bit. But I don't want you to be taken back when you know that we have 30.4 million and there's only 9.9 and wondering where the other projects will come up. This is phase 1. So the steering committee will continue to meet in order to be able to put a comprehensive list together. So we will be able to total out all the money that was approved by the voters for committee recommendations. Specifically going on page 35 and 36, you'll see various items for various campuses at all levels, elementary campuses and secondary campuses as well. It's to address the needs, again, that were brought forth by the committee. There's a lot of discussion on the items, and we were able to, again, the committee came to a consensus that these are the recommendations that we're going to present to the board for approval and also to HISD staff for consideration moving forward. So are there any questions specifically on the either items on 35 and 36?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Cavazos.
Dr. Hinojosa, it says canopies, Harlandale High School. What canopies?
There was some canopies that were damaged in a windstorm and a weather storm, and they've actually been down in the courtyard area. So while there's some courtyard canopies that weren't affected by the storm, there were a couple of areas that were impacted. So those have not been replaced yet.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa.
Yes, Mr. Luna.
Ms. Dr. Hinojosa, on these 34, 35, 36 pages, according to my understanding, what's available right now? Like
2.5 million is available for this first issuance for the committee recommendation.
And you're gonna call that phase 1?
Yes, sir. Mhm. And
So how are you going to determine which of these projects are gonna be in that phase 1?
So once we get, we go through the formal approval process of these projects that are phase 1, then we're going to take as HISD staff and administration, we're going to review to see what some of the areas that were going to be specific needs on the campuses. And then we will bring that forward, which is really the second part of what we were going to discuss, which is a handout that's at your table in your space. So I hope to answer that question with the next part of the presentation.
All right, because that's what I'm kind of wondering. I know there's a lot of needs out there.
Yes, sir.
And I know the community's working hard, and I know other community people have been telling me about the needs they have at their campuses.
Yes, sir.
And now principals were moved around, so I know that's going to affect the needs as well.
Yes, sir.
So just kind of give us, I guess, in my mind, to separate
Yes, sir.
phase 1 from the rest.
Yes, and that's an excellent point. So one of the things that we've discussed with the committee is that every item that you see listed is one that's going to be taken into consideration. Even though we currently have $2.5 million available, that doesn't mean that just because they're not selected in this phase 1, that they're going to be removed from the list. They're not going to be removed from the list. What we'll do as we move forward with the different issuances and the different meetings that we have with the committees, we will add items to this list. And so at that point, you're going to see on the list on both those pages, you'll see some items that say TBD. And so if you remember back to the, I believe it was March earlier this spring when we approved, the board approved BLGY as the architects that were going to be responsible for overseeing these projects. They did provide cost estimates. And so some of the estimates, the dollar amounts that you see on here were the estimates that they were able to provide. The TBD are items that we have not been taken to them for estimate purposes, simply because we knew that with the estimates they gave us, we had already exceeded the initial issuance. But as a committee, it was discussed that those items will stay. That's not to say that they're not important. We just don't have estimated costs for them, but they're on the list. And as we continue to receive issuances, we'll be able to get estimates for those projects. And again, once they're on this list, it was determined by the committee, they remain on this list. All we're going to do moving forward with phase 2 and phase 3, we're really going to base those on the next 2 issuances that we receive. Then we'll come back. We'll take off whatever projects are done with this first issuance, and it will just continue to add to this document. So this is really a living document for us.
On that follow-up, thank you, Dr. Nelson, the committee. I know there's gonna be, like I said, there are different needs, but once again, I want the people of the community to understand is that we're blessed to have this funds available, because a lot of people get confused that why can't we use that bond money to build, to pay their staff and things like that. But they also have to realize that this is a plus for the district, because we're offering basically new buildings. I know like in some of our neighboring districts, they haven't remodeled their buildings in over 50 years, especially the ones in north of us. And that's just, people need to realize that we are able to do these and provide this to the community, and especially like those playgrounds. And I'm sure most of our kids are going to enjoy the playgrounds and the canopies and the upper grades. And so they just got to be aware that we're so blessed to be having that bond committee and that bond passage.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. And thank you for that. And I think that's one of the strategic targets that the committee has, is to address the needs at all different campuses. So that's why you can kind of see that throughout the 2 pages, is there's projects at every grade level, at every, elementary and secondary campuses. And that's going to be one of the continued efforts as we move forward, is to make sure that those are projects that are added. Again, that we're not going to just specifically concentrate on one grade level or one campus.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Ms.
Who did the
Ortiz.
rendering for McCullum High School?
That was BLGY.
So there's a 2?
Uh,
That's what it looks
There
like,
was
2?
there was 2 options, and if it's okay, I'll go ahead and segue into that part of the presentation. That way I'll be able to answer those questions. So if on the handout that you were placed, and again, this was this particular, you're going to see that bond steering committee information, and it's the packet that Ms. Ortiz is referring to. I just wanted to kind of review a little bit and touch base on that first page in terms of like the breakdown of where the finances went, or where the finances will be going in terms of the steering committee and the committee recommendations. So the part of the first issuance that we received for Prop A was $40 million. And if you look at the second issuance that we're expected to get in 2025, again, we definitely want our students in school, just, because we need them to get an education. But if we're specifically looking at the bond, we need an ADA of 10,250 students to be able to have that next issuance of $33 million. So this particular issuance that we had $40 million, we were able to designate, if you see the committee recommendations, we were able to designate 2.5 million for the committee recommendations. If we're able to receive the $33 million for our second issuance in 2025, we'll be able to earmark approximately 2.3 million. And that number is determined by the number of projects that are part of the bond. So when we pass the bond, if you look at the first issuance, those bulleted items from the stadium to the CTE building, the technology upgrades, the lighting of the fields, the ROTC building for McCullum, and then the recently approved adding the multipurpose gymnasium, all of those were part of Proposition A. So those were what was taken to the voters in terms of them approving the overall bond package. So that's not the total list of all the projects. So we still have other projects that are not included in that first. So those other projects that were a part of the bond will be included in the second issuance. So that's why it only shows 2.3 made available for the committee recommendations, which will leave us a total of, with the last issuance again, and these are estimated dates. I'm assuming I'll have to defer that to Mr. Hernandez, but in our final issuance, again, if we maintain that ADA, we'll get $52 million in that third issuance. And of that dollar amount that'll be issued, 25.6 million will be for committee recommendations. So if you were to total all 3 of the issuances, the committee recommendations, it will total out to the $30.4 million that was designated through Proposition A. So if the one little bullet under the committee recommendation, and I promise Ms. Ortiz, I'll get to your question. 2 of the options that you're going to see do not total up to 2.5 million. So with those options, that money that's basically the balance, the remaining balance will carry over to the next issuance if we're not able to address other projects. So once the steering committee met on Monday to finalize that list that we presented to you on page 35 and 36, we brought those recommendations to administration. And so our conversations were one of the areas that's been a concern for us really with the safety concerns with what we had to implement for the after the Uvalde. Can I get to the next? There you go. Is safety. So a big area of concern for us is not being able to have that single point of entry into McCollum High School, because we have those openings that I believe at one time had some wrought iron gated fences. And so we had to kind of create a fence line to be able to be in compliance with the safety requirements, but we've made it very difficult to create that single point of entry. And so that's where that's what's driving two of the options. So this option is a $1.9 million option. So now, as far as the renderings go, when we contracted with BLGY, they took into consideration, again, the money that we had available in the first issuance, and they put together two options for us for being able to address those safety issues with that front elevation at McCollum High School. So if you look at the $1.9 million option, you'll see what the estimated cost would be, and basically what this particular option does. And of the three renderings, you will see they're creating the single point of entry in the middle. The second picture is just a little bit more of that visual in front of the elevation. The third picture is a view from the courtyard area. So basically what this option does, it's creating a reception area where those glass doors are, and you see the glass door windows on the inside of the courtyard. That's actually a reception area. So if an individual student parent is going to walk in through the front, they're actually going to be greeted in the reception area right there in the foyer area. And so then if you can envision, they'll walk in, they'll have a receptionist position there in the front, and then they will be able to go to the offices to the right. But this would create that single point of entry, and again, just a single point of entry, so we can be able to comply with the safety guidelines from the state. And then aside from that, if we were going to add the band hall flooring, we've had some issues with the flooring at the band halls, at both band halls, and so that was part of both of the steering committee recommendations. So this particular option would include that to be able to address and change out the flooring for the band halls. And then the estimated cost would be a little over $2 million. So this is one of the options that does not utilize all the 2.5 we referenced a second ago. It'll be a carryover of that balance. If you were to go to page 3, it's the $1.5 million. And again, it's estimated, it's 1.574. This particular option, again, would address that same concern. The difference between this one, if you look at the picture in front of you, there's a single door entry to the right-hand side where I believe it's yellow. I'm colorblind, so I'm assuming it's yellow. But that individual on the right-hand side is going into that single door. So that would be the actual entrance to the office. The doors that you see in the middle, those glass doors would actually be locked and secured. So there would not be a reception area there. So that would be more to assist with the exit out of the auditorium. If we ever had functions in the auditorium or student release times, they would be able to exit. They just would not be able to go through those doors. If you look at the third picture, if you can scroll up for me, please. Thank you. That's the inside view from the courtyard. Again, you see that single pane. It's basically a wall. So that's not an enclosed area. So it doesn't provide a space that would be safe to have, or, it would be an outdoor setting for a receptionist. And we definitely don't want to do that for any individual. So again, the single point of entry for this particular option would be the entrance to the right-hand side. And then to go along with that, because of the cost, there were some renovations that were brought up with the committee for some restroom and concession stand facilities at Harlandale High School for the baseball and softball field. So that, as projected or estimated by the architects, would be at $1 million. So this would take us to the 2.5 that's a part of this issuance. The $2.5 million option, or would take us near to the 2.5. The $2.5 million option that you see on page 4, that's actually a combination of various projects, again, that are in the committee's recommendations. So what you would see on page 4, there's some running tracks that have been brought up as recommendations. The yellow arrow is pointing to the kind of the general area for the project. So at Leal, you would have and at Kingsborough, and those two were selected over the other two simply because the proximity of Terrell Wells to McCollum, they have access to the track, and the same for Harlandale Middle School has access to the Harlandale High School track. So these two particular campuses are standalone, so they would not have access to that. And then one of the projects that's also designated for later on that was part of the bond was to resurface the tracks at the two high schools they would be all weather tracks, similar to what these two would be. So the students at Harndale Middle and Terrell Wells would have access to an all-weather track similar to the students at these two campuses as well. You see there's a difference in price in the estimated and by the estimators, and that's simply because when they the soil testing and the drainage in the particular areas is different for the two campuses, so it impacts the price a little bit. So even though they're both going to get all-weather tracks, there is a price difference because of the drainage that they would have to put in place to be able to not have flooding issues at those two campuses. The other two pages, page 5 and page 6, are elementary school playgrounds. And again, there's just a yellow arrow designating the area that was discussed and reviewed with the architects, potential sites to be able to put in those playgrounds, those inclusive playgrounds that will make sure that all of our students will be able to utilize. And again, the difference in price for those, even though the page 5 Vestal and Collier are the same dollar amount, it's because basically the general location for them, Gillette and Adams, they have their configuration of space would be a little bit different. And so that's why the cost is difference for those two. And those are projects that, again, you will find on the committee recommendations. So are there any questions or clarification?
Ms. Ortiz, did you still have something you wanted to ask or you got it answered? Is still chunking on it?
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Luna.
I was still want to clarify. So I know we have all these propositions coming up, so I know I might sound redundant, but so I probably would like list them differently. There's a 1.9 option, and then there's a with leftover money, and then there's a 1.5 million option, 2.5 million, and then there's the other options includes the elementary schools and the middle schools. They're not gonna be all done at the same time, right?
They will be scheduled out. So what we're going to do on Monday is we're going to bring forward a recommendation. We wanted to have the board the opportunity to review, but at Monday's board meeting, we will bring a staff recommendation for one of the options. So whatever option is selected, those projects will be done again, depending on what the staff recommendation is for the projects.
I know what I wanted to ask.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am.
So the McCollum High School front entrance
Yes, ma'am.
to be redone is part of the second issuance? Is that what we're looking at? And what year? Are we looking at 2033?
No, that's a great question. So no, these three options would be a part of this issuance. So it would be something that we would be able to, once approved and once presented and approved, we'd be able to go back and actually come back with a schematic design and do all the move forward with the process to put those projects in place now. The second issuance and the third issuance would be any of the items on that are on the current recommendation list, and anything that's added after that, those will be a part of the second issuance and the third issuances.
Just looking for a timeline. McCollum, since it's been built, they've been saying that it was never finished. The front of the building was never finished. And then we got those TDCJ burglar bars in the front. And it's just not, it's not right that it was never finished. And I just want to kind of get a timeline. Are we talking 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What are we talking about?
So if the option is presented and is approved on Monday is one of those two options for the elevation, then we would be able to move forward with the architects. So in terms of like an actual timeline, when I visited with them, the procurement process and the rendering and the plan, the design plan and all that would begin immediately. As far as breaking ground or be able to make that a start the actual construction, it wouldn't be till sometime next spring, maybe the summer, simply because of the design phase and all the components that go along with it. But the option that's presented, approved on Monday night, I'll be able to contact the architects and be able to start moving forward. So it will not be that long of a process. The process that would delay it would simply be the design phase and the procurement information, the items that we have initially.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Hosa, since the architects kind of did the renderings on their own and some of the board is, not easy to digesting this, would we be able to meet with the architects to give us several different options on renderings to bring back to the steering committee so they can see it? Because I don't even think the steering committee even met with the architect, right? It was just the architects just seeing what we had in place and they thought this would be best.
Yes, sir, exactly. That's exactly right. So the architect did meet with a committee, but not specifically about this item. They did, when they provided the renderings, we did share those renderings and the packet of all their cost estimates. We did share that with the committee, but they have been, I don't know if y'all remember, but Mr. JT Guthrie and I can't pronounce her name, but she's no longer with the company, but Mr. Hawkins, the principal owner, they both offered to be able to attend, and they're offering all the time to attend any of the committee meetings. And we definitely would be able to have them share that information with them so we can move forward with an approval of an option.
Ms. Cavazos, you had something as well?
Yes, Mr. Soto, you were reading my mind because what I was gonna say is, were the designs based on the right now structure of the campus? Or was it based on using the most of what we have now with spending as little as possible? I guess what I'm trying to say is and this is just a question because I'm curious, is it because the current structure only allows so much of a design? Or is it because it allows more of a design, but this is what would best fit the monies we are accountable for?
So excellent points all around, because I think it's a little bit of both. So one is the issuance of the money that's available, but two, it was really taking in consideration the safety guidelines, the current structure, the current elevation of the front of the school. So what they did when we met with them is they, I think, went 2 or 3 times to the site. And so they did take into consideration the current drainage. If you're familiar with the front end of at McCollum where the marquee is, there's a big grate of drainage. And so a lot of the drainage funnels back into that. So they did take that into consideration. So when you see like the front of the elevation, that was taken into consideration because it would just be an added expense to reroute all the drainage when it's already there. So they did build, some of the design was around the current existing drainage. But a big driving force is really trying to create, in conversation with them, is that single point of entry, which is what it's a huge concern at McCollum, because even though, we did have to go back because of the safety guidelines and put in that wrought iron fencing that Ms. Ortiz was mentioning, we try to hide it as much as possible behind that first wall. So it was really a combination of everything you brought up. It's really trying to marry not only the budget, the safety concerns, and the existing structure.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. And I have another question, if I may, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the steering committee recommendations, and although I understand there are some matters that we're going to take care of now, and some of the other matters will just move up on that list, and we will get to them as that money is dispersed to the district. Fine arts expansion to be determined. Are we talking about building auditoriums? Are we talking about repurposing the now fine arts classrooms? Can you explain a little bit more of that, Dr. Hinojosa?
Yes, ma'am. So on that, it's TBD, simply because we still want to have conversation with the campus principals, and we're having to look at class sizes and the amount of students in the programs. And because every campus is kind of individualized when it comes to that, we just needed a little bit more time to be able to spend at the campus level to find out what the actual needs are. So we have met with Mr. Leos, the director of fine arts, to be able to have that information, and then also with the campus principals. But as Mr. Luna said, we had a little bit of movement in administration, so we're really letting the schools start, and then that way we can get better idea of numbers. But it's going to be either additions or renovations, to the existing structures, or it could be an addition where we would actually build to the side. It's really going to depend on the campus needs.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed? Mr. Soto?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hernandez, on these dollar amounts, like for the first one that went to 2.09, what is the benefit? Wouldn't we want to spend every dollar that's available to the community? And so we would try to fit in a project to make it to 2.5?
Yes, sir. The monies that that would be the best way to utilize it. But again, if the remaining amount is not going to cover a whole project that is being designated, we will need some of the proceeds from the next year, then at least that money can carry over. But yes, sir. I mean, that would be the best way to utilize it now to benefit the students.
Dr. Nosa, I guess if you can get with your committee, and I know it's till Monday, to use, if the board is okay, is we're only using 2 million and we're leaving 500,000, almost $400,000 to wait for another 4 years, or another 2025. So
Yes, sir.
see if we can find a project that we can plug in here.
Yes, sir.
If for the option that the board's going to review.
We can certainly, and they're all here, sir, so we can do that right after the meeting. So it works out pretty good if they're willing to stay a little bit longer. But yeah, we can definitely add some other projects to make sure that we try to balance out the 2.5.
Great, sir. Any other comments, concerns, or clarifications needed on this item, guys? And just to echo, as our team has kind of shared, we appreciate the committee and Dr. Hinosa on doing all the good work for our district and our campuses, and Mr. Soto for allowing that autonomy. So thank you. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for joining us. And then moving on to item 17, the board will review and discuss to adopt a resolution fixing and levying ad valorem taxes for the Harlandale Independent School District for the year 2023 and directing the assessment and collection thereof. I'm assuming Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, sir. This is the last item related to the property taxes and property values. What's being presented for adoption on Monday night is the adoption of the tax rate for 2023. The recommended rate is the result of what the state always has had in place since House Bill 3, which is the maximum compression rate. This year in 2022, it was at 0.8046. The compression rate then went down to 0.6192. Our tier 2 pennies remain at 0.3383. So basically, the bottom line is that when you look on paragraph 2 on page 37 of your board book, the M&O tax rate component part of it will go down to 0.7575 from where it's currently at 0.9429. The amount that's related to the debt service, which pays our bonds, will be at 0.50. The tax levy on that, along with the state assistance that we get on our bond payments, will then meet our obligation that we have each year. So one of the things that we always need to point out when we go through this process of the adoption is what I've put in quotes, and that's a requirement that needs to be read by the state, that's required of the district to read in accordance with the tax code. And so what will be read is basically the adoption, recommend the adoption of the $0.2575, which again is made up of the two components of the M&O and the debt service that I just discussed. But what we also need to state is that it's effectively a 13.74% increase in the tax rate. And again, that goes back to that to the other agenda item where we talked about no new revenue tax rate and the voter approved tax rate. And the difference between those two is at 13.74%. But again, it's a requirement that needs to be read, but this is following the state's compression and also maintaining our tier 2 pennies, which maximizes our state funding.
All right, guys, any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this item? Doesn't seem like it. So appreciate that, Mr. Hernandez. Moving on to the next item, which is to adjourn.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Carrillo.
I move to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn and a second.
Second, Luna.
Second by Mr. Luna. We'll go ahead and call for the vote.
The oldest member.
Poll is open. And close the poll now. Motion passes. It is now 7:59. We have adjourned.